But what we're going to talk about today is two things that I think that would help your career later on after you get out of school here. Probably not a lot of the things I'm going to talk about are going to help you pass any class or learn any new knowledge, but it will help to increase your marketability in the marketplace. The first being engineering licensure, or the PE. Has everybody heard about what that means, kind of? Okay, great. Well, I'll delve into that a little bit more and talk about the process of getting there. And two, SFPE. I'm sure you heard about SFPE. Basically, it's two presentations from two organizations, one called the NCEES that I'll get into a little bit more, which they really control the whole PE exam process for all the engineering disciplines in the United States and in some countries actually outside the United States too. I personally work at the Society of Fire Protection Engineers. I have been a fire protection engineer since 1987. A little bit more about my background, since I know this is a lot of fire service folks here. Here was my rookie year back in Prince George's County, Maryland, as a volunteer at a fire station right outside the University of Maryland. As you can see, that's kind of an old picture if you look at people with the three-quarter boots, which you wouldn't see, or open cab ladder truck we used to have there. I spent 20 years at this fire department. The Prince George's, if you ever heard of Prince George's County before, it joins right up next to the District of Columbia. It's a crazy, crazy, crazy place to volunteer for sure. And probably, throughout my volunteer career as a firefighter, professional career, probably the coolest thing I have ever done was get to drive the back of the fire truck. Without a doubt, it doesn't get much better than that. That was our Seagrave ladder truck. We probably bought that right around the turn of the century, and it only cost about $450,000. Now I don't even think you can get a pumper for $450,000, what people are telling me. But it was a really nice fire truck. But getting back to where we started, we're going to talk about your future. It's all about you. When you go out and work, of course, everybody wants the opportunity to make more money when they're employed. That's always an important thing to everybody. No matter what anybody wants to tell you, of course, people in our profession about wanting to save lives, that's always important too. But, no matter who you talk to, making money is always an important thing because you have to pay the bills and you want to do a lot of cool things. At the same time, being marketable or getting a job that you really want to get, finding that job, finding that perfect job. How do you put yourself one step, above the people that you're against? The path towards licensure and also being part of SFPE could actually really help you a lot. I told you I was going to tell you about this organization called the NCEES. They're based out of Clemson, South Carolina. Actually, they're right on the campus there in Clemson, South Carolina. They're not affiliated with Clemson University. However, it is a national nonprofit organization that's not part of the United States government, but it is a nonprofit at a national level. And the people who are members of this organization work for the State Board of Engineers. In the United States of America, the rules for engineering, or the laws of engineering, are all created in the states. Basically, the laws are basically the same when you go in between states, but there are some minute differences. One thing the NCEES does is they write a model engineering law for the states. This model engineering law is similar to an NFPA code or a standard, an ICC code, where they're all model codes where people come to consensus and write a law or a code, and it's up to the individual jurisdictions to adopt these. And they can adopt them any way they want. So that's why you do see specific differences. However, these state boards control everything from who can perform engineering. Actually, they define what is engineering. So for example, any law would say if you're designing a bridge, that is engineering. Anything that impacts the public's health, safety, and welfare that has to do with engineering will be defined as engineering. And of course, in fire protection, everything we do is related to the public's health, safety, and welfare. They have a website called ncees.org. I am going to talk about the 2 exams that are needed to become a professional engineer. There's a lot of information on that website, so if you are interested in getting into the process of becoming a professional engineer, that's a great website with a lot of information that you'll need. And specifically, I'm going to define licensure. Why do we have it? What is it? Why it should be important to you. I'm going to talk a little bit about ABET accreditation. I'm sure everybody knows about that. I have to congratulate your faculty here, Greg, and the rest of the faculty who worked really hard to get ABET accreditation for this program here at Eastern Kentucky. There's only 3 ABET accredited fire protection programs in the United States or the world right now, the University of Maryland and Oklahoma State University. So that's a great step for this program. Once again, just like licensure and the other things I'm going to teach to you today, is that ABET accreditation also helps put you one step above everybody else. It's not easy to do. There's a lot of work, and like you said, you definitely have to commend the faculty for a nice job of getting this program accredited. Probably talk most of the time about the FE exam. Has anybody taken that exam? Was anybody interested in taking it? Great. And I think the most important message I'd like to get across today and tell all the other students in the technology program is take the exam in your senior year. Everybody should take it. There's no reason why you shouldn't take it. I know you're busy and senior year is a tough time, but you should really take that exam because that is a really important part of the process. I'm going to talk a little bit about the PE exam. However, you probably won't be taking that for a while, and then SFPE itself, or my society where I work for, and show where you could work with SFPE, once you get out and graduate and help make a difference in our profession. So when it comes to licensure, why we do this whole process, it's a very, when I go through the whole thing, it's a very big process. There's a lot of work that goes into it. The main thing is we're really determining competence. We want to make sure that if people are participating in the workforce as engineers, that they're competent into doing their job. And as mentioned before, everything's related to health, safety, and the public welfare. So we don't want engineers designing buildings when there's a fire that people are going to be dying, or there are dangers that people aren't going to be able to get out, with that inadequate egress systems and things like that. We want to make sure that our engineering force is competent to do that job. And how we determine competence is really understanding what is the knowledge, skills, and experience people in our profession need to be competent. So basically, in a nutshell, licensure is a permission granted by a government entity to allow you to practice in a specific profession. Any other profession that impacts the public safety and welfare in the United States has a licensure program. I'm sure you know accountants have a CPA program. Attorneys, you're required to pass the bar to practice law. Even the people that cut our hair are required to have a license through the state. Actually, the state of Kentucky has probably a laws for barbers and who could be a barber or not a barber. Now, of course, their licensure program isn't probably as extravagant as the one I'm talking about, but we do want to not protect people from really bad haircuts, but things like head lice, I guess, and things like that are very important, and that's why you see that. The PE license, as I said before, when it comes to you, it's a very important thing that you could carry as soon as you become a PE. Basically, as long as you maintain competent engineering and maintain some professional development hours every year, depending on the state, you will be for life. Like I said, being a PE, you definitely stand out in the crowd. When somebody's looking at a bunch of job resumes, yours will stand out against the others. I could specifically say I applied for a job one time, probably about almost 20 years ago. I hate to say that. And there was another individual that I went to school with. We went to the same program. We worked for the same amount of time. He was a very smart guy, smart engineer. And he was not a PE, and I was a PE. And when I got the job, my boss said, "Hey, did you know that other guy applied?" I said, "Yeah." And my boss told me, he said, "The only reason why we hired you over the other guy is that you were a PE and he wasn't a PE." So there's many ways that you could benefit by having a PE license. I'll talk about them a little bit more, but at the same time, it's a two-way street, because you, as a PE, knowing that you're a PE, we know that the public is going to be protected, from incompetence in the profession. As I said before, licensure is regulated by the governments. There are some small differences between the states. Specifically, as a graduate from an engineering technology program, that plays a big role as opposed to differences between states, because right now I think there's probably about 32, 35 states that will allow people from an ABET accredited technology program to practice, where the rest 15 probably don't. So that's an important thing to know. The other thing about the differences from states is, of course we have federalism in the United States, but also different states, there's different things going on. So for example, if you want to practice in the state of Alaska, they have a very intense test about working in the tundra and cold weather environments, where we wouldn't have to worry about working in the tundra out here in Kentucky or where I'm from in Delaware. The organization I was talking about, NCEES, not only do they write the model law, but they also, they're responsible for the two tests, the FE exam and the PE exam, that I'm going to talk later. SFPE, our organization, our part in the process is we write the fire protection PE exam. We hand it over to NCEES, and then they distribute it to the people who are taking the test. And why being a PE isn't important? Well, these state laws I'm talking about, in some states, you can't even put engineer on your business card unless you're a PE. So if you can say, I'm a fire protection engineer, some states, they won't even allow you to say that. Even if you have, even if you graduated from a program and went on to practice 20 years, if you're not a PE, you can't even call yourself a PE. There's no state that will allow you to put PE next to your name unless you're licensed in that state. That's an important thing. You put it on your business card, you put it on your letterhead, and also to do any kind of what the state's defined as engineering. You might be able to work on the project, but it has to be oversight through a PE. So if you're ever interested in starting your own consulting firm and want to do design work, you have to have a PE. Talking about salary, if there's any way you want to really make the big bucks in this profession, no matter what you want to do, owning your own firm is the way to go. Of course, nobody's going to come right out of school and start their own firm. It's always best that you learn the business, learn what's going on, learn who the clients are. But owning your own firm, you could significantly make a lot more money as opposed to anybody else in the profession. It also, like I said, your resume will stand out. I actually had another friend who worked for a county in Virginia as a fire protection engineer, worked there for over 20 years, never got his PE. He's great, he's fully competent, his boss finally left after 20 years, and they put out the advertisement for the new boss, and they told him, you can't apply because you're not a PE. It's a shame because he really knows the job very well, but they said, no, the person in this position is going to be a PE. Even though in code enforcement, there really is in a law right now that code enforcement people need to be PEs. But there are some local jurisdictions that will say, hey, we want that person to be a PE in our jurisdiction. Specifically, the Society of Fire Protection Engineers every 2 years does a survey of people who practice as fire protection engineers. The median salary for people who were not PEs is somewhere in the area of $96,000 a year. However, the compensation for somebody who's a PE, this is median compensation, not mean, somewhere around $122,000 a year. So there is definitely a difference in the possible salaries of becoming a PE. So I talked about all the benefits. How do we get there? Well, first of all, right now, by just going to the Eastern Kentucky University and entering the program here, you are working on the first step, which means getting a degree, a Bachelor's of Science degree from an accredited university program. Greg, you missed it. I said a lot of accolades towards you and the rest of your faculty on ABET accreditation. What a great thing it is. But you can watch the tape for that if you want to see that. So right away, you go out and get your degree. You've passed one of the 3 steps. I'll talk a little bit more about ABET. I'm sure everybody's heard a lot about this, but that is a very important organization. They accredit programs in applied sciences, computing, engineering, and engineering technology. It's kind of sort of like the PE of university programs, right? If we could say, do we have a competent university program or a good, solid engineering program? ABET is the organization that accredits these university programs. So out of these 4 elements, probably engineering and engineering technology programs are the most of the workload that ABET looks at. But anybody who wants to be an engineering or engineering technology program in the United States, you have to have that accreditation. Also, that accreditation is going outside the United States, where we're seeing a lot of other university programs throughout the world getting this accreditation. The important thing to know about ABET is that they accredit the educational program itself. They accredit the fire protection technology program here. They're not accrediting the whole university. They're not accrediting the engineering department. They accredit specific individual engineering programs. Like I said, we're not really accrediting the degree, the graduates. It's nothing about the students. It's really about the specific program. That's what that slide's all about. And the same way as I talked about a PE is having that stamp of approval, also having to say that you have an ABET accreditation. You graduated from an ABET accredited program, once again, is another way that opens doors. Part of ABET, there's 35 member societies. SFPE is one of the member societies, along with all the other big name engineering discipline societies. And basically what we do at SFPE as part of the ABET process, first of all, we represent our profession. ABET wants their programs to look like the profession. Are they teaching the things that our profession needs us to be teaching, or needs Greg to be teaching, right? At SFPE, we developed the program criteria for a fire protection engineering technology program. So our members write this specific criteria that your program needs to meet. We also participate on the ABET Board of Directors. And another important thing is our members are the people who come out, volunteers from SFPE that come out every 7 years and are the people who evaluate the specific program. So if you ever want to get involved with SFPE later on in your life, that's one thing you could do to participate in the profession is become an ABET evaluator. Part two of becoming a licensed engineer is experience. A lot of that experience is required to be under supervision of a PE. Like I said, all the states are different. When you look at an engineering technology program, it can be anywhere from 4 to 5 to 6 years experience to become a PE. The other thing is that they ask that it's progressive experience. And what they mean by progressive experience, over that 5 or 6 years or 4 years, you need to show that your experience level as an engineer has increasing. So when you first start out at the job during year 1, you might be doing basic work that's under intense supervision. By your 3rd year, maybe you're having a lot less supervision. By the time you're ready to be a PE, you need to show that you could basically do this work without any supervision, but maybe that PE is just checking your work and making sure you're doing a good job. And the third part, and probably the most important part while we're here today, is there's 2 exams you need to take. The first being the FE exam, or the Fundamentals of Engineering Examination. Like I said before, the most important thing I hope you learn today is that you take this exam in your senior year. Whatever you do, as opposed to licensure, in your senior year, take at least 1 day out of your time to take that test. It's very important because the pass rate is significantly lower if you wait to 3 years after graduation. The highest pass rate right now is around 80%. And that's for people who took it at their senior year or within 1 year after graduation. Once you get past 3 years, the pass rate keeps going down, down, down. And the reason why that is the Fundamentals of Engineering exam is really, that's what it is. It's the basics, fundamental things like math, physics, chemistry that you learn here in college, but you're probably not using all that mathematics once you get out and practice. So, take it senior year, ASAP, very important. The second exam is the PE exam, or the Professional Engineering exam. Usually people take that 4 to 5 years after graduation. However, some states now aren't requiring you to have any experience to take the PE exam. And that's definitely going to be the trend throughout the nation. So that once you pass the FE, if you pass it in senior year, you could go take the PE exam whenever you want after that. However, normally, in the old way of doing things where you would wait your 4 or 5 years to take the PE exam, that would be the day you become a PE. Unfortunately, if you pass the PE exam with 0 years experience, you still have to wait. But basically, it's just waiting and doing your time. Okay, talk about the FE exam. The FE exam is a computer-based test. Has anybody ever taken a computer-based test before? Oh, well, that's great. So that will give you some great. Was it like at a local testing center or something like that you had to make an appointment with? Okay, cool. Well, it's going to be very similar to that experience where you sit at a computer, you make an appointment with a test center, and you do everything basically on the computer. You have a pencil and paper to take some notes, but everything really is in the computer itself. To register in your senior year, you go to ncees.org. You set up an account. It's called a My NCEES account. You pay your fees, which I had up, it's $225. I know that sounds like a lot of money to people right now. A lot of times when I throw that $225 up, but you have to remember that's really a small investment to make for some big gains later in your career. Once you're signed up, in a few more days you'll receive authorization that you were accepted. You could schedule the exam. You could schedule this anytime, any day. You could do the scheduling anytime, any day. But you're open to take the exam throughout the year as long as you could make an appointment with the test center. So that's really nice. At one time, going back 3 or 4 years, the exam was only held, when it was a pencil and paper exam, it was only held on 2 days during the year, once in May and once in October. So you had to wait for that time, and then you had to go in a big room with a whole bunch of people. Now you have this nice, really silent test center, and you can basically take it on a date that works really well for you. The test center is called Pearson VUE. That might have been the same test center that you were at before. They do have them throughout the United States. I think the closest one here is in Lexington, and I think they have one in Louisville, and that's probably the closest ones to go to. But if you live somewhere else and you want to take it during your summer vacation or whatever, or a break, they're all over the place. It's important that you'll get a letter from the notification saying with your set time and everything like that. Hold on to that letter, don't lose it. That's something you have to bring with you to make it into the test center. One thing, once you register, they're going to say there's an examinee guide. That's an important thing. That doesn't tell you, that's not the reference manual, which is something else I'll talk about later that has all the equations. This examinee guide is the rules of the test and all the rules that you have to follow. So that you guys have, most of you have experience with electronic testing, you probably know that there are a lot of rules. They take this really seriously. It's all about exam security. There's a lot of people, they find cheating on these things. Some of the rules may seem ridiculous. Like you have to use the pencil they give you. You can't bring your own pencil in. There's a rule on calculators. There's 4 types of calculators that you're allowed to bring into the exam. They won't let you bring, a TI model, whatever. If you bring a different TI model, they won't let you bring that in. If they find you using the wrong model calculator, some people think they're really slick and say, oh, I'll bring in the model they say and put it on the desk and I'll slip one out the back of my pocket. They'll throw you out of the test. If you don't use their own pencil, they'll throw you out of the test. There's rules about scratch paper. If you don't, if you write somewhere else besides their scratch paper, you'll get thrown out. There's a rule about not having a cell phone. Don't bring a cell phone in, because if your cell phone rings or vibrates and they hear it, you'll get thrown out of the exam. I know a story of a guy who was taking an exam, and it was 1 minute before the exam was over. He got a call from his wife asking if he was done the exam yet, and it rang, and they said, out. And they threw away his test. So unfortunately, the biggest penalty is you just lose your time. They're not going to, you could always come back later and take it, of course, but they will not allow anything you did during that day to be relevant if you don't follow their rules. So read this examinee guide carefully. Bring with you, like I said, that letter from Pearson VUE. The examinee guide will also tell you that you need to bring a government ID, a passport, driver's license. They're going to take a picture of you when you're there. They're going to do a palm scan of you to keep that in their records. When you go take the PE exam, they'll match it up to make sure it's the same person taking the FE exam and the PE exam. They even have what they call approved comfort items. Like you could wear eyeglasses, but you can't bring the case for the eyeglasses. You could have a light sweater, but you can't have a heavy sweater. How they decide what's a light sweater and a heavy sweater, I have no idea. But read that carefully, because you don't want to be in a position where you're getting thrown out or going to have any difficulties, because that's the last thing you want to worry about. Even if you do resolve that with the people at the test center, you don't want to have that aggravation to go through. When you get there, you're assigned a locker and a key. Do they have lockers for you to put all, that's where you can put all the stuff that you're not allowed to bring in, right? And then they're also going to make you sign a participant agreement. That's an important thing. On that participant agreement, they're going to say everything you see today is confidential. Everything stays in that room. It's a violation of that participant agreement to go home or back to wherever you're living and tell your friends, hey, we had a question about topic A. In actual reality, nobody's going to be able to enforce that. I've never heard of anybody getting in trouble for doing that, but what we do see people doing is they go back to Facebook or somewhere on a blog or a web page they have and say, hey, I just took this test today and these were all the problems. They reuse problems. That's why it's impossible to have a test like this without having to reuse problems. There's many reasons why they reuse them. One, just to have enough questions. One thing they do in the process is statistics galore on everything. Every problem that people take, they run all kinds of statistics because they want to see if that problem is testing people well or doing a good job of testing. And if they don't, they throw them out. So that's why they like to reuse problems. But actually, NCWS has people who are employed to just sit on the internet all day and make sure that nobody is posting these problems on the internet. So when you sign that agreement, listen to what it says and remember it. Things that are not permitted. I talked about a smartphone. iPads are not allowed. Unapproved calculators, food and drinks. Don't have anything in your pockets to try to whip that out later. Hats, coats. So books and notes either. The PE exam is going to be a little different where you can bring books and references. This, you can't bring any, and I doubt that's going to be a problem because the people at the test center won't even let you bring any books in, but they'll be prepared to use a book on the exam. The exam now takes 6 hours. It used to, the old pencil and paper exam took 8 hours. There's 110 questions. So one important thing to think about is making sure time management is very important. If you find yourself taking over 5 minutes on a problem, it's probably best to keep going to the next problem because you want to make sure that you time things out properly. Part of that 8 hours, there's an 8-minute tutorial that helps you learn the computer system itself. Signing that non-disclosure agreement is 2 minutes. Out of that time, you will be actually testing for 5 hours and 20 minutes. So actually, you need to answer 110 questions in 5 hours and 20 minutes. The questions are multiple choice with 4 options, A, B, C, and D. You do not get penalized for an incorrect answer. So it's very important that when you're done that you answer all the questions. It's always best to guess. And actually, if you come across a topic you don't like, a topic you don't know anything about, just fill in A, B, C, or D. When they write these questions, they make sure that 25% of the problems are A, 25% are B, 25% are C, 25% are D. So there's no advantage of picking B over C or D. There used to be a misconception that most questions have the answer B and the second most have C. So they always say if you guess B. That is not true. So, but guess anyway, that means you have a 25% chance of getting the problem correct. And then you fill out a post-exam survey at the end. They ask you about the comfort in the room. Were you comfortable? Was there things bothering you? Was the tutorial helpful? And then they'll ask you about the test itself. Was there any questions that you saw that you thought were unfair? And then in between, there will come a time, not necessarily always at the 55th question, but somewhere around the 55th question, the computer decides this. How it decides it, I don't know. It's going to say you have a break. You're scheduled 25 minutes for your break. You could take the break or not take the break. If you don't take the break, you don't get 25 extra minutes. So it doesn't help you either way. But if you want to just keep rolling through it, go ahead. If you want to take the break and get something to eat or get a glass of water, go to the restroom. The other thing to remember is you are allowed to take breaks at other times if you raise your hand besides that main break. But if you do take that break, it will go against your 5 hours and 20 minutes. So it's probably good at least take part of that 25 minutes for your break to at least go to the restroom or do anything like that, so you don't have to worry about that in the second half of the exam and then lose time. Because you can't say, oh, I have 25 minutes left. They're going to say, no, too bad. You lost that 25 minutes once it's over. The calculator policy, I told you about that. Every year they come out with a new list of 4 calculators. Basically, they're same models. There's a couple TIs in there, Texas Instruments. I think there's a Hewlett-Packard one there. But make sure you check that out. And I also recommend that if you haven't used that calculator before, that you buy that calculator at least a couple of weeks before exam time to at least familiar yourself with the calculator. There's also a calculator that's part of the computer system that you could use there, but I don't recommending that unless your calculator dies out or something like that, because you would have to learn how to use that calculator on the exam day. This is what the exam looks like. It's a split screen. The problem itself is on the right. These problems are designed that you should be able to answer them in 2 to 3 or 4 minutes. So that's one thing not to worry about. They look at people with your type of experience, and they make sure that an average person who's in their senior year of a BS degree should be able to answer this question in 2 to 3 or whatever minutes it should take you. So you will see that the questions are most of the time compact like this. They're usually going to say, hey, boom, here's the question, A, B, C, or D. You probably won't have many questions where you have to read like 4 or 5 paragraphs or anything like that, because that's just going to take up all your time. Now, the trick for any engineering student is, in your whole career as an engineering student, you probably haven't answered a whole lot of multiple choice tests like this in engineering. And when I go into my suggestion of planning of what you should do to pass this test, that's definitely one thing I recommend you do, is familiar yourself with answering these short type multiple choice questions. On the left is the reference material. The reference material is searchable. So say they have a question about conduction radiation. There's a box up here that you could write in conduction. And then all the formulas related to conduction will come up on the screen. Now, on the NCEES website, they also have a model reference manual that you can look at before the exam. You can't bring that with you to the exam. You can only use the one on here, but it's the same information, it's the same manual. But another key to passing this exam is you go to that website and you learn about that reference manual, and you learn what kind of equations they have and don't have. There's 7 different exams you could take: a chemical, civil, electrical, computer, environmental, industrial, mechanical, and then what is called other disciplines. Most people in fire protection, if they don't have experience in any of these other disciplines, because sometimes we see crossover people take what is called the other discipline. It's basically an exam designed for people who are not in these other engineering disciplines, and there's probably about 10 or 12 of them, like agricultural engineers and things like that. So I definitely recommend taking the other discipline unless you started your first 2 years in environmental engineering or something like that. Basically, the topics are mathematics, probability and statistics, chemistry, physics. There's stuff about ethics and professional practice, safety, health, and the environment. All of this is listed on the NCEE website. They also have a practice exam of 50 questions. I can't say I'd recommend paying the $50 or not paying the $50. I believe that's a personal decision you have to make. Some people like to do practice exams. Personally, I wasn't a practice exam type of person, but a lot of people like that. And if you like it and you think it's worth $50, it is a good representation of what the exam will look like. And I think besides the fact that you should take the exam in your senior year, I think the second best advice I could give you for passing this is have a plan. I understand in your senior year of college, you're very busy. You're focused on completing your degree. A lot of people might have internships or a job somewhere else. Some people have family commitments. Some people want to party their senior year and have a lot of fun, which I was included in all of those on that list. So you're probably not going to have a whole lot of time to study for this. And I understand it, and I don't think most people do. Now, I'm not saying don't study for this, and I'm not even sure that my plan up here is the best for everybody. But to me, the 4 things on this list are what I would say to do as a minimum. And the first one is have a plan of action. And what I mean by a plan of action is you don't have to take the test and answer question 1 first, question 2 first, question 3 first. You can skip around. The questions are oriented in the different subsections that are in. So for example, if you're really good at math and that's your best topic, I recommend going right to the math questions and knocking them off. Now there might be a topic like electricity and magnetism that I doubt you, maybe if you were in physics, had any contact with. At least that's the case when I took the exam. So I recommend doing, if you didn't, or if there's a topic there you had no contact in, don't even take it to the end. So have a plan of action of how you're going to maneuver your way through the test, I think is very important, because you should put most of your time on the topics that you're good at. The other thing, especially in the other disciplines, they understand that everybody isn't good at all these topics. The test is written that way. So for an agricultural engineer, there might be topics related to the environment that they're going to answer way better than maybe somebody in fire protection. But when it comes to things like hydraulics, you'll probably be way better than people in some kind of software engineering or something like that. So don't get stressed out about that fact that you might not know all the topic areas. Just remember, have a plan of action. The one thing you can't do is go back between the morning and the afternoon, or the first part and the second part. As soon as the first part's over, you can't go back to it. So as soon as you've done the first 55 or so questions and you go to your break, you can't say, question number 1, let me go back. No, you can't go back to that. You can only work on the rest of the exam. My second recommendation is know that examinee guide. Know what you can do and not do in the testing room. Once again, you don't want to get thrown out of the test. Know the reference manual. At least spend some time going through it, knowing what kind of equations are in the reference manual or not is very important. And then my fourth recommendation is practice short questions. That might mean having to find a practice exam manual. I'm not going to say you need to buy one, but there are a lot on Amazon. I don't even know who makes a good one and doesn't make a good one. But it might be worth purchasing that and working their practice questions. I wouldn't, at least getting yourself used to, hey, here's the question, A, B, C, or D, whipping it off. Because like I said, in your normal coursework, that's not what you're normally doing. So if you're going to do 4 things to prepare, they're the things I definitely recommend. So hopefully you'll pass this exam in your senior year. Once you pass that, you could call yourself an engineering and training. Once again, I think even being an engineering training or passing the FE exam is a good thing to put on your resume. A firm, if they want to hire you, could say, hey, that guy is a serious person. He wants to go and become a PE someday. So I would think if you're looking for a job and you want to get into engineering, if you have a FE or you're an EIT, I think you're going to stand out more than somebody who doesn't. I'm going to briefly go into the PE exam, not in the same kind of depth that I did the FE exam, because you probably won't be taking that for a couple of years. Go ahead.
Is there a probation period if you do not pass your first time?
Right now, I believe if you fail, it takes them about 2 or 3 weeks. The computer will know if you passed or not, but it's probably not like the other tests you took. It won't tell you that because it's all bureaucracy and they want to send it through this guy in the States. So normally they don't get back to you in about 2 weeks. So you couldn't take it the next day, but you could take it after you knew you failed and sign up again to take it again. Now, right now, I don't know of any states that limit the amount of time, the number of times you could take it, but that is something they're looking at. However, I can't understand if somebody didn't pass it 3 or 4 times, you're not going to, it's something you only want to do once in your life. Sitting in front of a computer screen for 6 hours, it's not a fun time. I'm sorry, it's just not, unless you're a really, really, really strange type of an engineer, and there are some of them out there. So the other thing to think about is the way they write these tests, and I told you about all the statistics and everything, is that the pass rate for somebody who takes it the first time in their senior year, right out of college, I said it was 80%. And that's first time takers is around 80%, in high 70s, low 80s. It fluctuates. For people who take it 2 or more, that percentage, take the test 2 or more times, that percentage really goes down. Because the way they look at it is that if you failed the first time, you probably shouldn't have passed it the second time unless you really did something to improve yourself. So, but at the same time, don't get down. I know people who failed it the first time. They were really good engineers. They just had a bad day. They got back, they studied a little harder, and they went and passed it. Before I move on to the PE exam, any questions about the FE exam? The other thing is $225. If you don't show up on the day of your appointment, you get penalized like another $50. So show up on your appointment unless you get a flat tire or something that can't make it, because it will cost you $50 to get back in again. Actually, I think they had one person who failed his appointment 10 times right now. So they've made like $500 off this person. The PE exam used to be considered a final step, but now that you can take it right out of school, maybe not. Right now, the PE exam is a pencil and paper exam. It's 80 questions, and the PE exam really tests your discipline itself. All questions are discipline specific. So there is a fire protection exam, and all the 80 questions will be fire protection. Just like the computer-based FE, each question is multiple choice with 4 options. This test is written by SFPE members. So once again, there's something else that the people in our profession are doing. And the same thing as when you get into the profession, it's something you can do. It is an open book or open reference manual at this time, open manual test. That means you could bring all the books you can into the test. However, we do believe it will be in a computerized format around the year 2019 or 2020. I said it's 80 questions. Here are the types of questions, or what is called the exam specification. This specification is written by the members of our profession who are surveyed every 7 years. So people who are PEs take a survey every 7 years and are asked what they do as a fire protection engineer. And that's how we get the types of questions we ask on the exam. So finishing up on that, taking these tests, it's a lot of hard work. You have the time and effort involved, but I really think it's well worth it. I'm glad to see there's a lot of enthusiasm in the office, in this room right here, for people who want to take the exam, because I think it is something that can really help you out in your career. The NCES, I would look at their Twitter or their Facebook accounts, but the YouTube channel, they do have some really good videos about the test itself and how to prepare. They also have a nice little video of what the test experience will look like on the day of the test. So it's definitely worth taking a look at. And my final 5 minutes, I just want to hit a little bit about SFPE. I'm sure everybody heard of our organization. We have about 4,000 people throughout the world that are members of the Society of Fire Protection Engineers. We have about 70 chapters throughout the world. One of them being in the EKU chapter right here, where our local chapters is really a place for our members to get together and work on things and come together in a regional effort. We also are responsible for the body of knowledge of our profession. We do that through distributing engineering guides and standards. So like on the left, we have a guide here that was written by our volunteers on how to design tall buildings. We also write the SFPE Handbook of Fire Protection Engineering, which I'm sure many of you have heard about. We have a magazine that comes out about 4 times a year. It does come out 4 times a year. We provide continuing education. Why that's important: once you become licensed, most states require you to maintain some form of education, usually in the area of 30-some hours a year. So you're required to either go to webinars or training session or conferences to get that training. We help promote our higher education programs through ABET, and we also work to promote our profession. I talked a lot about our licensure program, and if you want to go to our website, it's sfpe.org. If you ever need to contact me as you prepare for the FE exam, my email is easy, chris@sfpe.org, or look for me on LinkedIn. Does everybody have a LinkedIn account? So I think that's another important thing to do, to get your digital profile out to future employers. LinkedIn is a great way to do that. So but thank you very much, and thank everybody, and thanks for the pizza. And any other questions? Okay, thank you.
I got one.
Sure.
You said get your FE when you are a senior. Even if you are going to get a master's, you still suggest getting that?
Yes, I would say get it as soon as possible.
Okay.
Because that's the farther, even when you get into your master's program, that's the farther you're going to get away from those things like math. Even though you might be doing that in your master's program on a level, maybe a higher level on some sorts, but not the variety at a lower level that you see, right? So I definitely recommend still doing it then.
How does getting a master's play into your status of P? Does it drop the
Yes, good question. If you go to Maryland or WPI or even Cal Poly, it will knock some years off that experience, at least down to 3 years, and most states. So if you go to one of those 3 schools, for sure. Is there people going for their master's someday? That's great. Oh, that's awesome. I know you even had a graduate of the International Master's program from here. If you haven't heard about that, I think that's a tremendous opportunity. I wish that was around when I was younger, but one, I think you get a scholarship from the European Union. And if you haven't been to Lund in Sweden or Ghent or Edinburgh, they're all tremendous places for somebody at your age to, that's just a tremendous opportunity.
We had a blast. They gave him a stipend and paid for all his housing. So
Yeah, that's amazing.
he lived for 2 years.
Yeah. But at the same time, if you're considering Cal Poly, University of Maryland, or WPI, all 3 are tremendous programs. They got great teachers. If you're still thinking about which one to go to, I always tell people that they're all very good. They all have very good faculty, but there are minor differences in the programs. And I always tell people to be very proactive. It's an important time of your life. So go out and call up these schools. I know most of the professors will love to talk to you about their programs and start a dialogue with the people out there. And you'll get a feeling, it will tell you, you'll say, hey, I like talking to Brian Meacham at WPI. I think that's somebody that I could really work with, because that's another thing you have to be thinking about. Even as a master's student, you will be working with a faculty member a lot more than you would be at the bachelor's level. So definitely take the time to figure that out and pick one that's right for you. Like I said, a lot of people say, which one's better? There one isn't better than the other, but there is one that's best for you and what you want to do and what you like doing and what's going to be most comfortable for you. So, any other questions? Jeff?
One more.
Sure.
What is the reciprocity for, let's say I got my PE here in Kentucky, and I wanted to work at Illinois?
Yeah, great question. And I'm sorry I didn't bring that up. I should have. The question is about reciprocity, and once you pass all those 4 steps, except for the experience part where it does differ between states, you don't have to take the FE exam anymore. You don't have to take the PE exam anymore. But what happens is once you pass those 4 steps, you become a PE in a specific state, say the state of Kentucky. If you want to move or do some work in California, it's a relatively simple process of a lot of paperwork. So you'll have to get some references, just like you would to file for the first time. You have to show your experience, but you don't have to take the test again. And saying that you're licensed in one state is pretty easy, besides filling out some paperwork and, of course, paying the fees, because they have licensure fees that you have to pay every year. The other thing is the NCEES has a program that they call Model Engineer, where you could register with them one time. So if you do have a consulting firm and you think you're going to be working in 5 or 6 different states, that being an NCEES Model Engineer, they call it, is even easier to get through the states. There's still some paperwork, you still have to pay the fees, but it makes it a lot easier just to say, if you say I got the NCEES record, most states will just say, okay, great, hand me your money and you're good to go. So, sorry I missed that. That's a good point, because I usually bring that up. So.
The state of Kentucky is really tough on that, actually.
Are they? Good.
Chris Wood was a PE in several states, and he had the hardest time here. And he had to do the CES record
To get into the,
to the board here in the state. He had to get it. So, but
Yeah.
they finally allowed it to go through because of that.
yeah, it's funny with the states that some of them are easy, some of them are, impossible. Like Florida is like one of the worst, and New York's kind of goofy. So, but at the end, you'll eventually get through it. It's just how much they want to make you work for it. Any other question? Well, hey, thanks again. I really appreciate you coming out today in the snowy weather, and I don't know if you get much snow out here during the year, but thanks again. Thank you very much.